come to work, so my peoples come first. I got worldwide family all over the earth, and I worry about them all for whatever it's worth.
All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. And when and if Camilla joins, she can just jump into the conversation. So it's great to introduce Yaniv Tal, the project lead of The Graph and also a co-founder of The Graph, Tech from Binance X, working with Binance, and then Camilla Rousseau, the founder of The Defiant and author of The Infinite Machine. Hi, Camilla, great to see you here.
Hey.
Hello. Today we'll be talking about the values of decentralization and what that impact is. So I know that you've all been in crypto for quite some time. So what do you say are the values that define the crypto community? Let's start with Yaniv first, then Camilla, and then Tech.
Yeah, hey, Tegan, great to be with you. Just want to say, I think that this is a really important topic of conversation right now. I think, the space has seen a lot of growth just over the last few months. After this kind of, crypto winter. And I think at the end of that winter, we were left with really just like the builders and the real believers. And I think we do have a lot of shared values that kind of, brought us into the space and have, made us persist through that kind of difficult time. And, now that we're seeing, more people are making money and there's a lot of just financial motivation to be in the space, I think, we're having to grapple with some difficult questions. And I think it's really important and valuable that we have these discussions, because I think, as a community grows, you have this opportunity to kind of solidify, values. And I think it's difficult to do after the fact. I think communities, they tend to, have these things cemented pretty early on. And so it's like at every stage of growth, I think it's useful to think about this. So, I think the crypto community itself is really broad and diverse, right? And I don't think you can paint it with a single brush. We've got everything from, crypto anarchists to libertarians and dreamers and everything in between. But I think, a common thread is that, we're trying to create a better society. And doing so by building systems that are themselves resilient and free from capture and corruption and things that have plagued systems of coordination before, and that I think we believe that decentralization is an important piece in enabling better, more fair societies.
Absolutely. Camilla, anything to add on the values that define the crypto community?
Yeah, so I think, the value of decentralization is, mostly it focuses on control on the individuals over entities and institutions. And I think, that's kind of the revolution that blockchain technology is trying to enable, to provide this kind of infrastructure for a more open system that lets everyone participate in kind of equal footing, and not have some people that are kind of more equal than others, like have not have these hierarchies, but everyone participate in kind of this peer-to-peer system. And that's how the very infrastructure of this new ecosystem is built. Like, it is a peer-to-peer system, so it is kind of made to facilitate this this new way of doing things that doesn't have hierarchies, and that really puts the individual in control of their own assets and also of their own data and information. So it is a true revolution, kind of taking from the powers that be and putting it in the hands of the people, and I think that's really exciting, and hopefully it can create a more open and a fairer, a more fair future.
Great. Tech, anything to add?
Yeah, so I'll take a different take. So I think decentralized technologies are not actually new. people think of decentralized technology as blockchain these days, but then before that, there were, the internet protocol is decentralized, right? Or the BitTorrent protocol is decentralized. So I think the genesis of like blockchain was from Bitcoin. So Bitcoin was a decentralized protocol that was kind of built for the money use case, and it was invented in response to the 2008 financial crisis. So I think the properties that are important that come out of decentralization would be like trustlessness, where you don't have to trust any centralized entities. And in the case of Bitcoin, the motivation was not to trust central banks to control monetary policy. And then, of course, with the advent of Ethereum, where you have Turing complete capabilities, you can have any kind of use case be centralized, where you have to trust a centralized entity to mediate transactions between people, interactions between participants in the network. So I think ultimately, it's about trustlessness. It's about not having to trust anyone and being able to verify everything on a network independently. And also one aspect of it, which I think is very important, is the democratizing aspect of it, where this network could be accessible by anyone just by virtue of it being uncensorable. So no one can censor anyone from accessing the network. So those properties are like pretty important, but it's important to kind of go back to the genesis of the blockchain space, which is the Bitcoin white paper, and see how it kind of came to be.
Absolutely. Tech, this question's for you. So I know, Binance is one of the largest exchanges, I guess, internationally, I would say. And it really sits at such an interesting point in the space. I would love to understand, how big of a role does decentralization play in the projects that you choose to support via Binance? And then what else are you looking at before ever deciding to list a project?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely very important. Right? I mean, we have our own token. We have an ERC token now. We have our own Binance chain, and we just recently launched a Binance Smart Chain. There's various degrees of decentralization there, but regardless of that, we are at a centralized exchange with a lot of liquidity, a lot of users, and tokens of various degrees of decentralization, or projects with different degrees of decentralization are being traded on the exchange. In terms of like listing, we want to strike a balance between just curation and freedom to let users decide for themselves, what tokens or what assets are useful or interesting to them. So it's not it's sometimes a hard thing to balance, but we try our best. The ultimate goal is to protect users. So the obvious scams definitely are eliminated from listing on our platform. We try to kind of curate to sets of people who are earnest in trying to move the industry forward. So yeah, that's our kind of guiding principle.
Great. Yaniv, I know that you've been a proponent of decentralization and kind of this thought leader in the Web3 space. When Web3 wasn't cool, you were still a large fan and very bullish. So I would like to ask you, why you value decentralization and why you ensure, decentralization was so integral to the graph. I know a lot of folks kind of tried to steer you away from that path. So I would love to dive into that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess it just goes back to, why I'm in the space to begin with. I feel like, just globally, every country is kind of facing this almost reckoning right now, where we're seeing how the old world institutions are kind of struggling to keep up with the rapid rate of change. And I think it's a real problem. The internet connected everybody, but that means that there's just so much more that's going on, and so much information that is spreading around the globe, and these centralized decision-making entities just can't keep up. And I think that you see that across large corporations, governments, universities, and how we do like accreditation. And I think that the result of that is just that a lot of people feel disenfranchised in the system, right? They don't feel like they have a way that they can make the impact that they want to make in the world. And I think that that's a structural problem. And I think that, we're kind of in this transition to the internet age. And so the solutions to these structural problems are basically software solutions. And what really excited me about Ethereum is that I felt that it gave us the tools that we needed to actually tackle these really big challenges. And so I think I've held strong to the belief that the solution is there, and that the only thing stopping us is this long, messy, detailed process of building up that infrastructure, those design patterns, those applications, brick by brick, and that's why we've stayed focused on that.
Great. One question I have is around kind of transparency versus decentralization. So transparency means that there's kind of this full, the ability to audit on chain. So would you say that the main value add is decentralization, or would you say that it's transparency?
I actually see the trade-off being between transparency and privacy. And I think that both are made possible through decentralization. If you're sending all of your private data to centralized companies, you obviously don't have privacy. You also don't have, transparency. So I think decentralization is kind of a solution of both, re-architecting systems so that you don't have to trust, specific large, powerful entities. And then we have to actually debate the trade-offs there between privacy and transparency. Do I want to have global transparency into everything I'm doing minute by minute? Probably not. I think I deserve the right to some privacy in my personal life. But do I deserve privacy in decisions that I'm making that are going to impact hundreds of thousands of people? Probably. It's better for the society. So I think we have to make those decisions collectively around how to strike those trade-offs.
Absolutely. Tech Camilla, anything to add there?
Yeah. Well, I think transparency is a necessary condition for decentralization, because it's just every node needs to verify each other. And I think nowadays with zero knowledge systems, we could have verifiability while preserving privacy. So that's a kind of new thing that we're seeing in the space.
Great. I would love to direct a question to you, Camilla. I know you just had a really great book come out that really kind of told the story of Ethereum for the first time. So I'd love to give you the floor to really maybe talk about one of your favorite pieces from that book and dive into the details there.
Yeah, well, it's really hard to pick like one favorite piece from my book, but I'll just give context for those who haven't read it yet. The title is The Infinite Machine, and it's the first book on the history of Ethereum. It tells the story of how Ethereum was founded and the people behind it. It really explains the tech and how the blockchain works and smart contracts and all of that, but it doesn't really that's not the focus of the story. It's more of how the narrative of how Ethereum came to be. My inspiration for it was I always wanted to write a book in the way that Michael Lewis writes his book. So I was like on the lookout for that really interesting story that kind of sounded like fiction. And this army of hackers trying to change the world was really that story for me. It's really a fascinating story, how this 19-year-old, some would say genius, although Vitalik doesn't like to be described in that way. He thought of this more flexible blockchain that would allow developers to build anything on top of a distributed network. So it was going from peer-to-peer money to peer-to-peer everything. And this was like a super ambitious concept at the time that really Bitcoin was the only thing in crypto. Vitalik really decided to go outside the box and build something new. And so, you know, the book goes through all first how he was able to inspire a really group of diverse founders who came from different walks of life, who had really big clashing personalities. And so the drama that created, I think, you know, one of the most, this is not my favorite, but like one of the most dramatic moments in the book is when all these personalities are together in the same room, and you know they get into really a heated argument, and which results in two of the founders leaving the project. But in spite of all this drama and infighting, the community and like the idea of Ethereum was able to push through. You know, other dramatic moments with the DAO hack, and then the temptation of the 2017 boom, and then like the depression of the bust. You know, it's really kind of a roller coaster of a story. So yeah, hopefully people will want to read it, and you know, it shines light into why Ethereum is the way it is today, I guess.
Absolutely. I'm already looking forward to the next one. Amazing. So with, you know, open source technology that is decentralized and permissionless, it allows for kind of healthy competition. But what we've seen is some anonymous founders kind of popping up, stealing code, not really adding anything to the technology, just kind of taking the project and renaming it and rebranding it, and then pumping that price and then exit scamming. So I guess where, from your standpoint, does integrity fit into crypto, and how should kind of communities start to self-police?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question and very topical. And, you know, I think the reason that it's maybe difficult for our community to grapple with these questions is I think that, you know, we tend to be in this space because we believe in freedom and capitalism and like market forces. And I think that those are great values. But, you know, I think, you know, there are a lot of folks that have come out as being publicly, you know, profit maximalists. And, you know, I think it is worth thinking about like, what is the role for ethics in this space? You know, I very much am a capitalist, and I believe that, you know, the free market system is, you know, the most effective system that, you know, has been developed to coordinate economic activity on the planet, and is responsible for a lot of the wealth that we have today. And, you know, that system is predicated on the belief that, you know, you design these systems, or you could call it even a game, where each individual acts in their own, you know, rational self-interest, and that actually, you know, results in a positive social behavior as a whole. And I think that that's true. But I think that ethics is something that kind of runs parallel to that. And, you know, human beings are social creatures, which means that, you know, we innately have a sense of right and wrong, right? You know, what's good for the tribe, what is, you know, hurting others or not. And that kind of runs completely separate from this, you know, system of, you know, say profits. And, you know, for example, it might be a, you know, profit maximizing, you know, policy to allow slavery, you know, if you're a slave owner, but I think, you know, most people would say that, you know, that doesn't align with their ethics on a human level, that like, you know, it's not good for a society to have slavery. And so we just shouldn't allow that. And, you know, I think in the space where we are trying to not have centralization of, you know, decision-making abilities, you know, like, you know, government telling us what's right and wrong, I think it's really important for the community to, you know, in a sense, self-regulate, and to have these types of discussions around, you know, what is right and wrong. And every community might have a different answer, you know, to that question, but I think it's core to what makes a community. And I think that it's something that then, you know, needs to exist side by side with the profit motive.
Absolutely. Camilla, Tech, anything to add?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, so speaking about this kind of wave two in DeFi, first, like I'd want to point out the positives. Like I think it's really exciting to see this new narrative of like more community-owned tokens and no pre-mine, and just like incredible innovation. I think those are good things, and a trend that I think has a lasting effect in the space. I think, you know, investors in DeFi are less and less tolerant to really concentrated token ownership, and also kind of control, like concentrated control over a protocol. And so I think those are good developments. But at the same time, I think there needs to be a better alignment of incentives in these projects that ensure that the team and the users and investors in the protocol are that they all benefit from the health and the growth of the project in the long term, and instead of being just like incentivized to like farm and dump and just like leave the project as soon as they can make a buck, which I think is what's happening right now. Like right now, the incentives are very much to get as many token rewards as possible, compete with other traders to get in first, and then dump the tokens onto the next trader, and that's what's going on, and I don't think that's healthy. But I think people are quickly learning that this is not sustainable. So I think we'll see different models evolve that better align incentives and that make all this craziness more sustainable in the long term, I hope. And yeah, and I do believe it can come from kind of self-regulating markets, and I think we're already seeing that.
I echo that. Tech, anything to add there?
Yeah, I do acknowledge that we've seen quite a bit of what is considered malfeasance in the space, in the DeFi hype these days. But then another way to look at it is that it is a governance failure, or it is a governance flaw, if you will. If you so whatever, I mean, there are people in the crypto world that feels that kind of feel that whatever that can be done is by definition correct, but may not be morally right. So I mean, the fact that someone could just exit with a bunch of money, and it wasn't built to the governance where he couldn't, like the person couldn't do that. That is a governance failure, and we need to learn from that. And the fact that the person did that is a learning experience for the next set of protocols and the next set of people participating in those protocols. So I think it's an iteration, it's a learning process, and this people will learn about governance, people will learn about multi-sig addresses and things like that to guard against such negative behavior. So I think in one way it's positive. Yes, people have lost money, whatnot, is a negative, but it actually helps educate, and then the more people will come up to kind of make it easy to understand, the governance scheme of future protocols. So I think in some way that there can be a positive aspect to what we're seeing today.
Absolutely. I guess on this, Tech, I have a question for you. So, I know Binance does extensive due diligence oftentimes before they list a token. And I was kind of surprised to see Binance list sushi. So I guess my question is, how do you balance, moving quickly versus making sure that projects are very legitimate?
Yeah, that's a hard balance to strike, for sure. I mean, we go through what I can share is that we do have a very rigorous process. And many projects have gone through that process, and it involves multiple perspectives internally, including input from the community as well. So the users themselves, Binance and non-Binance users, are considered, their opinion collectively are considered. And I cannot comment specifically on sushi, but they were, generally speaking, in my own words, like they were kind of regarded, in some respect is like they have a lot of money locked in their contracts. So that is one signal where people have some trust in that protocol. In that respect, like a lot of people are writing about sushi, and so we feel like, I feel like there's a lot of eyes on it. Unfortunately, there's like I mentioned before, there are flaws in the governance, and it resulted in unilateral action and exit with the funds. But yeah, so I think it's a difficult process in a case by case, but we tend to have a very rigorous way to kind of get to that conclusion.
Yes, absolutely. No, it's a hard job. Okay, great. Well, this is a social impact conference. So I would love to ask, what do you think is the North Star for the blockchain ecosystem as far as, social impact is concerned?
I can go first. So, I think the North Star is to create a more open financial system. I think that's kind of the main value that DeFi is creating compared to traditional finance. And open means that everyone is able to access these financial applications. And that means everyone everywhere in the world, which is extremely important because right now the traditional financial systems are fragmented by geographies. I like to say that they live in different cages, and you need to be living in these geographies to be able to access these systems. So what this open network does is it opens up these cages so that everyone can have access. So I think that's the main North Star. And right now, while the kind of technology is there for that, like in theory, everyone could access. In practice, that's not happening because one, there are many roadblocks to access DeFi with just getting through ETH first, then porting that to like MetaMask. There's just like many steps. And second, just because of high gas costs, that it makes it impossible for just like normal people to transact. So I think the system is made for that, but we're not at a point there yet where it's truly open and accessible by everyone. But I'm really encouraged, and I'm confident that it will be.
Yeah, I think Camilla hit the nail on the head. But so just to add, a few additional things. I think kind of upgrading the game, I think is a big piece of what we need to do here to kind of restore trust in institutions. I think where people feel like they don't have a fair shot, either because they don't have access or because the game is rigged. Figuring out how we can create more fair games so that everyone really feels that they have a real shot.
Tech, anything to add?
No, nothing. I think Jenny and Camilla made very good points.
Great. Well, thank you all for the time on the panel today. I know, the graph is launching soon. Camilla just came out with her great book on Ethereum, so check that out. And then Binance Smart Chain just launched. So really excited to have you all here during such exciting times for all of your projects and your endeavors. So thank you.